going to happen this afternoon. So we're going to hear from the working groups that have been working on specific projects for the last year or more, so that you're all aware of where those things stand. And that should take, I hope, a total of about half an hour. Then we're going to have an ideas fair where we're generating new ideas and solidifying action plans for old good ideas that have not yet been done. So I'm going to kick off the working group summary with the update on where the comparative studies of female late choice project is. And so there are 37 people who are part of this project. Raise your hand if you are part of this project. It's like half the room, more than half the room. Great job. So this is a massive collaborative group that's been focused on one manuscript. And so since 2015, we've been working on a manuscript that I'm going to give you the progress report on today. And the idea behind this manuscript is, of course, starting with the fact that manakins are these wonderful, amazing, sexually selected animals that have a lot of different sexually selected features. It is often assumed, but rarely tested, that these elaborate sexually selected traits reflect current opportunity for sexual selection to function. And so what this group is coming together to test is whether that's actually true. How and why does opportunity for sexual selection vary across the Manakin clade? And to do this, we're not actually measuring sexual selection, we're measuring the opportunity for sexual selection, which is defined as the variance in fitness among males divided by the mean fitness squared for those males. And so to accomplish this goal, we divided the world into two parts. Part one is done. Part one looks at identifying an appropriate fitness metric that we could apply across all of these manakins, as many as possible, so that we could have enough species in our anelli. And then part two is examining the relationships of opportunity for sexual selection with 5 types of trait elaboration across the maximal number of species that we could get. So to remind everybody what we found in part one, we considered a bunch of different possible metrics of fitness. So genetic siren success would be great, but I think we have that for 2 or maybe 3 species. Copulatory success would also be fantastic. Again, we don't have it for that many species. Rates of display for females, whether or not there was a copulation at the end. Rates of display without females present. And what we did was identified a set of 8 species that had more than one of these potential fitness metrics measured, and then we looked at what was our kind of least common denominator of fitness that was correlated with our ideal measures, genetic siren success or copulatory success. And spoiler alert, it's rate of displays for females. So what we found across all of these species that we had sufficient data, so not all of the species that had more than 10 hours of display per male, rates of display for females correlated with the likelihood that that male would copulate. So this is our best approximation that can be generally pulled from large numbers of studies. In lance-tailed manakins, we had all of those different fitness metrics. Displays for females and total populations correlated reasonably well with actual number of chicks sired by these males. Displays without females didn't tell us anything at all. And there was the same sort of trend with Diazepia pipra, which is now Pseudopipra pipra. So part one, the answer is we're going to use displays, rates of display for females. And so we had in hand last meeting 8 species worth of data and a potential 19 species on the horizon. We have today in hand 8 species of data and a potential of 19 species on the horizon. And so what we're doing with those species is examining how opportunity for sexual selection across species relates to the extent of dichromatism, like spatial organization, social complexity, and display complexity, and also acoustic diversity. So lots of different things. What we did last time in Panama was made sure that we had methods for extracting this information from across an array of species. The group read and commented on those methods and formed a solid action plan. And then after that meeting, we aim to complete the data extraction, identify all those possible fitness display data sets, and deal with analysis and write up that fall. But what actually happened was that after the meeting, I went back to the field and and so I fully take the blame for not following up to make sure that people produced the data sets that we needed to wrap up this analysis. So, 2019, new year, the task forces are on task, I believe, currently completing their data collection, and these are the people. You'll notice social complexity has a big blank. Following up on that, if you haven't been part of this group and you really wished you had been, there might yet be an opportunity for you to take part. The comparative analysis people don't have much to do until they get the data. So, if you are in groups A through E here, make sure that you actively have a plan to collect your data. So our goals at this meeting are for you guys to give me a timeline for getting your task force's data so I know when I should check in with you and when too much time has passed and we should sound all the alarm bells and help you out in any way possible. So our goal is to also communicate with each other. So there is time in the next 2 days to touch base with the other members of your task force and make sure that you either know where all the data is or who's doing what. We have kept the time for this meeting flexible because what happened in Panama is that the Make Choice Working Group was directly opposite several other things, and you saw how many people are involved. It kept people from being involved in other things. It's not what we're trying to do. You know what you need to do? The goal is to just make sure you can move forward and do it efficiently now. So we'll do a short all group meeting for people who raised their hands earlier on, Friday from 1 to 1:30. And then we'll provide a summary to the whole group, kind of showing you the timeline of what we've agreed on at that point. So be talking to me leading up to that. We're not going to have much time for each group to talk. So if you run into a problem, be proactive and talk to me ahead of time. So one other part of that is I really do think we're going to make it to 18 or 19 species here, and Marina is coming through with like about 10 of those. It's amazing. Maybe not quite 10, but lots and lots of species. But the ones in green are the ones that I have currently in hand on my computer. The ones in black are the ones that we think we will shortly have. If you have rates of display for females from multiple males of some other species, including number of displays for females and observation time per male, so that we can calculate that rate. Don't just give us the rate. Ideally for males observed for 10 hours. Please send that my way by the end of October. If you're not already part of the group, you are an author if you contribute data, and this is our bottleneck right now. This is fitness data.
I sent 3 species by Friday.
Awesome. Yes. I'll hug you right after this. If you're interested and not yet involved, don't worry. If you really want to help with social complexity, come talk to me right now. But we're also about to talk about a whole lot of new opportunities that build on this project. And so there will be opportunities to join those new projects at this meeting. As we move forward, don't forget the MOU. So this has been the guiding document. One unanticipated benefit of this memorandum of understanding that we started at the beginning of this project is that after having collapsed for a year and not done much on this, I was able to go back and read my instructions to myself about how this whole thing should proceed, and it totally makes sense. So, so if you're confused, go back to the MOU that you've all agreed to, who's part of this group, and make sure that you know what we're up to. One part of this agreement is that we won't cite this unpublished work until it's done. So I know lots of people want that little note about display rates being a reasonable proxy of fitness. That's useful for a lot of people, and you want to cite it. So let's help get this paper out where people can use it. So again, these are the group members. If you thought you were a member of the group and your name is not up here, that means you didn't sign the MOU online, and come talk to me, we'll fix that right away. Yeah.
Quick question there. So, team on acoustic slides, very diversity. How can I learn more about this?
Which one?
The acoustic diversity there. How can I learn more about this?
Talk to Lillian, Laura, Melanie, Mariana, or Morgan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Curious.
Questions?
Yeah, we have sent the email.
Good. So I only had one new person sign up online, but I'll double check today, and if those names haven't come in through, then yeah. Great. Okay. Next up, we have Ben.
Matt or Rebecca?
Matt or Rebecca? Who wants to get Rebecca?
All right.
I totally forgot this.
Do people need me to do this? People usually complain out loud, they can hear me down the hallway and tell me to shut up, but please use it. Okay.
I will use it so everybody can hear me, including the next building. So last year we brainstormed about a couple of ideas that we thought would be sort of feasible to look at patterns of trait change and trait evolution across the phylogeny. And I'm glad to see I'm not the only person who after the meeting went back with great thoughts that I should be moving forward and got swamped with other things and really didn't. I guess the big accomplishment is the phylogeny is now submitted, and hopefully in a few weeks we'll actually hear and we'll hopefully get a positive review. I think Raphael did a really nice job. It was a good paper. So I think the nice thing is this year is a really good time and place to move forward, because if we get data, we should actually have a phylogeny that's published that we can build on. So I went back and up on the OSF site, I actually posted up notes from last year if anyone wants to look at that. During the ideas fair, I'm going to put up what I think are sort of the ideas we kind of came up simplistically, but maybe ways we can kind of move them forward a little bit more, maybe be a little bit more interesting this year. And my goal for this year, by the end of the meeting, is kind of have narrowed down on one or maybe two, and I think there are 2.5 papers I can get that I think are there to get people who might start being interested in building on some of these ideas, and then maybe within like a month have a meeting with people who couldn't be here and kind of finalize some of those ideas, assign tasks to actually begin to build the trait matrices and get working on this.
Cool. That's it.
All right, so I don't have the PowerPoint either. So where we left off? So in Panama, we had talked mostly about writing this review, and we did it. We wrote it. Everybody kind of pitched in. We put it together, and it was in review for about 5 months, and then the reviews came back. It was rough. So we have essentially been restructuring it. Brand and I have been rewriting and restructuring. If you were an author, I'm sure you saw the reviews. And so each reviewer wanted something a little bit different. Anyway, Brent has the paper. We're nearly finished. And then so it'll go back to all the co-authors to look at again, and then we'll resubmit it. And that should happen within the next month. The other thing that we had been working on was some sort of course, a class, to teach physiological techniques to different people who are interested. So that's where I kind of fell down in a nice field of grass. So I've not followed up with that. It didn't happen, and I'm not sure why. It's something we can talk about. So I think I'll put up a sheet for ideas, and I think we didn't do a fantastic job of this last time, but I think the physiology working group probably needs to think about concrete things they would want to do going forward, or if we're kind of done and winding down, or if we want to integrate into other working groups. But I think we should kind of have a strategic session. So that's all I got.
Give me just a second, I'll get your PowerPoint. Oh, you gotta, can you put it on, can you bring your computer and look it up?
Maybe. Okay, I'm reporting for the Environmental Variation and Frugivory working group, and there's sort of 5 things that have been occurring over the past year, and so I'll go through each of these in turn very briefly. The first thing is that Marco has been compiling existing dietary data for Manakins mainly consisting of fecal samples, but also stomachs and regurgitation. Also observational data, but he has so far collected 2,221 records for just the, I see that I screwed up on making this to, I think 29 species, I think that's what that 29 is there. However, only these species here have at least 10 fecal samples. And that's a very, 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 very small number of samples with which to characterize the diets of a species. Nevertheless, there are some dietary data for a fair proportion of the phylogeny at this point. We really, really want to augment this database, and later in the week we're going to briefly we'll put on the OSF site and maybe mention it in some session, a very, very simple protocol that if anybody who's collecting misnetting data in the field could help us expand this. But it's something to think about when you're coming up with your ideas, if you're thinking about comparative projects as a potential data source. Early in the project, we also talked about other ways of characterizing degree of frugivory, and Maud has been doing a lot of work on fecal barcoding and making progress. Maud and Emily have been working together to sort of cross-validate some of the different methods for Manakins. We aren't there yet, but it is something that's in the works. So that's sort of our activity, sort of thinking about the degree of frugivory. Currently, we don't have plans to like turn this into a standalone project. So it's kind of a data set in search of a question. If there's something there that really interests you, then want to work on it. We've worked on two papers, two review papers. One is sort of, you saw a presentation on this last year. It's kind of thinking about the associations between frugivory, sexual selection, and how environmental variation, particularly rainfall variation, both in time and space over different time scales, influences that interaction. That we had sort of a draft. There were basically two ideas, two kind of messages in the first draft of that paper base. It's being split apart. This main piece of it is now the writing is being led by a postdoc in Betty's lab. She's given us sort of a second draft fairly recently. We're getting there. It's not there yet, but it's on its way. The piece that got busted out is something that I'm still leading, and it is sort of outlining this whole concept of the hybrid niche for endotherms and birds and other entropical endotherms generally. So we just today got our pitch accepted at Tree, which is cool. So now we need to cut like most of the words. The fifth project is something that Elliot Miller just ran with right after the Panama meeting, and he took all the eBird records for Manakins, cleaned them up, filtered them in various ways, took bioclim data, and characterized sort of the components of the environmental niche for all these different Manakin species. Then he started working for Mike Webster and said he couldn't do anything for us anymore. So Mike, however, he did sort of plot these on the JETS tree as just a preliminary example of what we could do here. Again, this is sort of a data set in search of a leader and questions. There's certainly things that we've talked about in the past that would be interesting to do with these data, and as you're doing your ideas fair, keep these things in mind.
What is this?
This is, I'm sorry, I should explain that. These are the mean annual precipitation, mean annual temperature, characterized at the species level using principal components to collapse individual point level records for each species, taking the environmental variables for at those points, integrating that into a single metric by species, and then
displaying that in, on a tree. Thanks. So this is not meant to be a final product at all. This was just, his first pass at like, sure, we can think about how, differences in, say, elevation that has a lot to do with temperature, or wet versus dry areas has changed how, those patterns of habitat associations have changed over the history of man.
Yeah, we have a very good interesting. They follow from each model for all the sources.
Yeah.
Because then it selects the best variables for each species, and you have actually some methodological ways to come up with a niche for each species based on whatever variable you.
Awesome. Great. That's all I have. Any questions?